All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm here at Camp Crazy, getting some work done on a beautiful day. Today is truly a blessing from God. Of course, every day is, no matter what it's like. But days like this in particular are a blessing, especially at this time of the year because they're few and far between. And winter is coming. It's easy to get lulled into a false sense of security. Um, it's easy to do that when things are as nice as they are right at this moment. And believe me when I tell you, it's really beautiful out here right now. Um, but I'm no fool. I know winter is coming. Well, I kind of am a fool, but that's another story. But I've lived here long enough in this area to know that winter is coming, and winter can be quite brutal. And so a day like today is my opportunity to get ready, batten down the hatches and get ready, as they say. And it's a real blessing to have days like this to do that in. Anyway, what I want to talk about is I want to give you guys a little background about me and how I came to be someone who doesn't trust authority too much, who doesn't trust the government. I'm not going to tell you every little thing that's happened. There's been a lot has happened over the years that led to me not trusting authority. But I will tell you, for me, it started back in the 1970s when I was still a kid. I was born in 1968, and so I grew up in the 1970s. And yeah, I can honestly tell you that from the age of about 6 or 7 on, I always had a feeling there was something wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I knew there was something not right about the way humanity operates, about how authority is related in relation to the average person, and so on, like that. I saw just enough corruption and just enough coercion and so on back then that I knew something just wasn't right, you know. But I didn't know what. I didn't have any understanding of what. It was just a feeling I have. You know, you get a feeling in your gut about a person or a place or a situation, and then it turns out to be an accurate feeling. Well, that's the stage I was at in the 1970s. I had that feeling in my gut. I felt something wasn't right, but I honestly couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know just what it was. Anyway, there's Rocky. He's trying to figure out how he's going to get under the camper. Quite a cat. But anyway, that was the start for me of a lifelong journey, really, of going down different rabbit holes and discovering things and experiencing corruption firsthand and seeing corruption occur and having people share stories with me and so on. A lot of people have shared their stories with me over the years, going way back, even into the 1980s and so on, when I was a teenager and a young man. And I think they sensed that they could talk to me, and many people did. And I discovered through all that there are major issues. That there's some force running things that isn't good, you know. And now, don't get me wrong, I believe in God. I believe that ultimately God is in charge. And if this is happening, it's happening because God is allowing it to happen. And it'll go on until He no longer allows it to happen. And He'll have some good purpose for that, whether we understand what that purpose is or not. However, at the present time, we are indeed living in a fallen world. And I saw signs of it early on. And I got to know a lot of things that others really didn't know, or the majority of the people didn't know, I guess you could say. In 1982, I had a run-in with my stepmother. I've told this story before. She pulled a knife on me because I was on my way out the door going to Mass, and she didn't like Catholics. It's kind of funny because she became a Catholic eventually herself, but in those days she did not like Catholics, and I was very Catholic. I was a devout Catholic back then. I'm a lapsed Catholic now. I haven't been a practicing Catholic in over 30 years. But in those days, I was very Catholic. Anyway, her pulling a knife on me and chasing me out of the apartment building downtown in Perth where we lived and threatening to cut me up, that resulted in me being declared incorrigible and sent to the reformatory in Kingston. Now, when I was at the reformatory in Kingston, I saw a lot of abuse. Again, I'm not going to get into it too much, but I did see a lot of really bad things. And I had the opportunity to talk to other young people like myself who were warehoused there. There were some genuine criminals there, but a lot of us were just warehoused, really. And what I found out in the 7 months I spent in that situation, I talked to kids who had been in the foster system. Some foster homes, not all of them. I want to be clear about that, not all of them, and I don't know what's going on in this day and age. But in those days, some foster homes, and maybe even now, I don't know. In those days, some foster homes were fronts for human trafficking. I don't think we called it human trafficking back then, but that's what it amounted to. And I heard some horror stories from kids that had been in that system, who just had the bad luck to get sent to one of those places. And the thing is, the authorities will not acknowledge. You can't complain because the authorities aren't going to admit that they sent kids to a place like that. They're not going to admit that they made that mistake or that they did it on purpose. Either way, they're not going to admit to it. And so once you're in that situation, you're stuck. Some of the ones that were in there because they were repeated runaways from those kinds of situations where people in high places were coming around at night and doing horrible things to the kids there, violating them and everything, So I got to hear all those stories. How the system that was supposed to protect you could do that to you. I mean, I was locked up by the system that should have protected me. At 14 years old, I had my 15th birthday. I turned 15 in jail. So anyway, terrible place. I wouldn't recommend it. Definitely not a good place to be. But it was an educational experience, and looking back on it, it was part of my education and part of what formed me into who I am now. Anyway, I had also been used as a guinea pig for medical experiments in 1976 when I was 8, and that affected my health and so on. So I saw how the medical system is also quite abusive at times. While I was locked up in the reformatory in 1983, I eventually you get passes where you could leave for a weekend or whatever. You could go home. I'd stay with my grandparents. There was one time I was up though in my dad and my stepmother's apartment when I was on a pass, and it was a Saturday afternoon. If anybody remembers what television was like in 1983, we were on an antenna. We had about 4 channels. And on Saturday afternoons, unless you wanted to watch sports or politics, there was nothing on. And anyway, I got flipping through the 4 channels, turning the knob. Remember the clunk, clunk, clunk? That's what I was doing on the old wooden box with the picture tube in it. And that's what we had in those days. In fact, that TV eventually blew up. The high voltage rectifier tube went out of it when I was watching it one night, and filled the living room with smoke. Made a hell of a noise, and it just filled the living room with this awful smoke. I remember that. I went over and I unplugged it and opened the windows to get the smoke out of the room. But anyway, this one day I found this political. It was like a panel discussion channel, and it was an American thing. And they had I think he was a congressman on there. And this congressman, what was his name now? Larry, Isn't that oh, Larry McDonald. Larry McDonald was his name. And he started talking about a lot of things that made the other panelist on the program, who was an older congressman by the name of Tom something or other. I can't remember his last name now. It might have been Tom Boyd, but I'm not sure. Made him very uncomfortable anyway. Tom Boyd, this Tom fella, he went on the attack against Larry McDonald. Really went after him hard. And Larry had an answer for him. Everything that this other one brought up, Larry had an answer for him, and that just infuriated him more. But Larry McDonald actually let the cat out of the bag. He talked about the New World Order, which was the first I had ever heard of that. He talked about the plan for the world, which we're now experiencing. This was in 1983. Remember, this was 1983. This was 41 years ago, almost 42 years ago now. And he talked about things that people in that era couldn't imagine, but are now commonplace. Larry McDonald. That piqued my interest. I thought, yeah, because I already gravitated towards thinking there was something off. So that piqued my interest anyway. Well, in September of 1983, Larry McDonald was on an airplane that strayed for some unknown reason into Russian airspace and got shot down by the Russian Air Force. He and everybody on the plane was killed. It came out later, after the collapse of the Iron Curtain. In the early 1990s, Russia released a bunch of stuff. And it came out that the airplane, because after they shot it down, they got the wreckage. The airplane had been tampered with. The navigation and communication systems on that airplane had been rigged to cause it to do that. And see, when the Russian Air Force intercepted the airplane, they tried to make contact by radio with the pilot. Because, they're not just going to shoot down a commercial aircraft. So they tried to make contact with the pilot to say, hey, you're in our airspace. Why are you in our airspace? And so on, to give them a chance, before they shot them down. And they got no response. Well, that's because the radio had been interfered with. It had been rigged up so there wouldn't get any response. And anyway, they shot it down, killed everybody on board, including Congressman Larry McDonald. Caused an international incident. We nearly had another world war out of it. Things got really tense. Anyway, they got rid of Larry McDonald. He spilled the beans, and a few months later, they got rid of him. And when that happened, when I found out that Larry McDonald had been on that plane right away, I thought, okay, yeah, that's too much of a coincidence, Way too much of a coincidence. And over the years, so many things like that happened that I picked up on. And now, of course, we have the internet, and you can look things up, you can research things, you can go down any rabbit hole you want to go down fairly easily. And so it isn't just a matter of finding something out by chance, or having a conversation with somebody by chance, or whatever, or just observing something like it was in my younger days. Now, of course, I have access to a lot of information. Some of it isn't right. There's all kinds of, I talk about misinformation, and some stuff is misinformation. Not all conspiracy theories are true or accurate, but there's an awful lot of them that are, and that's kind of frightening. Anyway, bottom line is, through my personal experiences, through various times when I was abused by the state, and also through being in contact with others who have also been abused by the state, and by observing, I discovered early on the doctor isn't necessarily your friend. The social worker isn't necessarily your friend. The police officer isn't necessarily your friend. It doesn't matter that it's an arbitrary rule in society that they are your friend. They're not necessarily your friend. And you can't just trust unconditionally. Now, they're not necessarily your enemy either, but they're your enemy at least some of the time. You know, so that arbitrary rule that says that the police are always your friend, or the social worker or the doctor is always your friend, that's not right anyway. But I knew this for a long. I've known this for a long time. Most people are only starting to wake up now. I've been aware of this for nearly 50 years, really, since I was, well, yeah, 50 years, since I was 6 or 7 years old. So that's 50 years ago now. That kind of hit me hard when I thought about that. And that's not nearly 50 years, 50 years. But like I say, it started out just as a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Something ain't right in Dodge. And it just kind of snowballed from there over the years as more things happened and I found out more stuff and I had more experiences. And I believe that everything that has happened in my life has happened for a reason. I don't know exactly what it is now. I believe I'm supposed to play some sort of a role, but I don't know what that role is yet. I believe God will reveal it to me when the time is right. And in the meantime, I'm just not cooperating. I'm experiencing some hardship because I won't cooperate, but I'm not cooperating. I'm following my conscience, and I'm just waiting to see what happens. That's all. And I'll know when the time comes. Whatever I'm supposed to do, I'll know about it when the time comes. But it could be that it's just a matter of resisting. Might just be a matter of maybe other people will be inspired to resist too when they see me resisting. Especially because a lot of people think I'm a weak person. It's amazing the number of people who look at me and think I'm a weak person. So if I'm resisting the evil that's happening, and here I am, somebody who's known to be a weak person, well, that's got to put those who consider themselves to be strong and who are considered strong to shame. So maybe that's my role. Maybe I'm just supposed to be perceived as weak, but to actually be strong, and to either inspire or shame others into also being strong. That could very well be what it is. Anyway, I wouldn't be here living in this era if I wasn't meant to be. None of us are here by accident. We're all here for some reason. We're all here to play a role of some sort. And, I come close to death lots of times in the past, but God spared me. There'd be a reason for that, Anyway, that's it. I guess we'll see you later. I don't know where Rocky is. I don't know if he got in under the camper or not. I don't think he was able to, but unless he went in at the end there maybe or something. He might have went in at the far end there. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll talk to you later.